They thought they broke you. They thought their betrayal would define you, keep you stuck, wounded, quietly hoping they'd one day apologize. But what if I told you, the apology you're waiting for is useless? If you've already transformed into someone who no longer needs it. The truth is, they don't expect you to rise. They expect a reaction, a collapse, something they can still control. What truly unsettles them is your silence, your clarity, your unshakable growth. That's when the tables turn. That's when they start to feel the loss. Because you didn't fight back, you evolved. This video reveals the Stoic path to the best kind of revenge. Not through anger, but through transformation. You'll learn how to turn pain into purpose, how to reclaim your energy, and how to rise so powerfully that their actions no longer matter. So if you're done waiting for justice and ready to become it, stay with me. And if this message resonates, don't forget to like and subscribe, because here, we don't just talk about healing, we live it. Let's begin.
Number 1.
Pain is a mirror. Betrayal doesn't just hurt because someone lied, walked away, or broke a promise. It hurts because it touches something deeper, something already cracked within you. That's why Stoic philosophy urges us not to react outwardly first, but to reflect inwardly. Because what if the betrayal isn't the problem? What if it's the reflection? Epictetus said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. This teaching cuts to the root. It means the betrayal didn't just create your suffering, it revealed it. That person didn't put the wound there, they simply uncovered it. So ask yourself, what exactly did their betrayal awaken in you? Was it a fear of abandonment? A belief that you're only lovable when needed? A desperate craving for validation? These wounds existed long before they entered your life. Their actions simply pointed you to them, sharply, painfully, without mercy. But that is the nature of mirrors. They don't lie, they only reflect. This is where Stoicism stops being comfortable. Because instead of blaming them, it dares you to examine yourself. It says, let this pain be your teacher. Let it show you who you really are. Beneath the mask, beneath the role you play, beneath the story you keep telling yourself. Marcus Aurelius, writing in the quiet hours of the night, confessed, when you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger. He knew something we forget. The hurt that lingers isn't always about what happened. It's about what it means to us. That's where philosophy begins, not with answers, but with honest questions. Instead of asking, how could they do this to me? Try asking, why did I give them so much power in the first place? Instead of spiraling into stories of revenge, ask, what part of me still seeks to be chosen, to be seen, to be approved of? That's how betrayal becomes the sharpest kind of clarity. Consider the life of Frida Kahlo. Her husband, Diego Rivera, cheated on her repeatedly, even with her own sister. The betrayal was devastating, but Frida didn't collapse. She poured that agony into her art. She let the pain shape her vision. Her paintings weren't just expressions of beauty. They were documents of survival, of seeing herself clearly, wounds and all, and still standing. This is the mirror Stoicism offers, not to shame you, but to awaken you, to help you see that your deepest suffering often comes from the illusion that others control your worth. That illusion is what Stoicism burns away. Seneca once said, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. And this is crucial, because after betrayal, we don't just suffer the event, we suffer the mental replay, the stories, the self-blame, the fantasies of what we should have said or done. We torture ourselves long after they've walked away. But if you can see that mental pattern, you can step outside of it. You can interrupt the loop and turn that pain into observation. Pain becomes productive the moment it becomes conscious. That's when it shifts from chaos into clarity, from emotional reaction into disciplined transformation. And that's where your true growth begins. Not when you get an apology, but when you gain perspective. Let's take another example. Howard Schultz, the former CEO of Starbucks. He grew up in a housing project, abandoned by corporate structures when his father broke his leg and couldn't work. That betrayal of security, of human dignity, stayed with him. But instead of growing bitter, he turned inward. He asked himself what kind of world he wanted to build, and he created a company that offered health care even to part-time employees. That pain didn't make him small, it made him visionary. This is the Stoic secret. What hurts you can also shape you. What exposes your fears can also reveal your values. And once you see that clearly, you begin to detach, not from life, but from illusions, from the belief that you need to be chosen, that you need to be loved to feel whole, that you need closure from the people who broke you. You don't turn a worm, eat dirt. What you need is awareness and the courage to sit with that awareness until it no longer scares you. So what does this mean for you? It means your pain isn't a punishment, it's a mirror. And once you dare to look into it fully, without blaming, without numbing, without running away, that's when everything changes. You stop asking for justice. You stop needing apologies. You begin to take ownership of your inner landscape. And that is the beginning of real power. The Stoics weren't interested in surface emotions. They wanted to know what lies underneath. Not just what happened, but what you believe about what happened. Because until you change the belief, the wound stays open. But the moment you see clearly, I gave them power because I doubted my own, you begin to take it back, quietly, steadily, permanently. This doesn't mean the betrayal didn't matter. It means it no longer controls you. The person who hurt you gave you something they never intended to give, a mirror, a lesson, a chance to evolve. And once you stop flinching from that reflection, once you face it fully, you don't just grow, you transcend. You become someone they no longer recognize, someone who no longer needs closure or revenge or even an apology, because your healing no longer depends on them. It depends on what you choose to do now. And in that space between the pain and the response, your real life begins, because it's not what happened that defines you. It's how deeply you're willing to understand it and what you choose to become once the silence teaches you who you truly are. Because the version of you they betrayed is not the version that will rise. And here's what no one tells you. Healing doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It arrives slowly in quiet mornings where your heart feels lighter and their memory no longer stings. That's when you know you've moved on. Not because you forgot, but because you outgrew the need to remember with pain.
Number 2.
Turn inward, not outward. When betrayal strikes, the first instinct is to look outward. We search for reasons, explanations, apologies. We replay conversations. We analyze their words, their silence, their behavior. Some people even go as far as building entire narratives, public and private, just to make sense of the pain. But this outward focus only amplifies the chaos. And as the Stoics knew, chaos is the enemy of clarity. Epictetus warned, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. That's not just about ideas, it's about direction. Instead of explaining yourself to people who don't care to understand, you go where understanding actually lives. Inside. When you turn inward, something shifts. You stop chasing validation. You stop needing the story to make sense. You stop handing your piece to people who already dropped it. And in that stillness, a new kind of power begins to emerge. Not loud, not dramatic, but rooted. Rooted in self-possession. Rooted in the realization that you were never supposed to get closure from them. You were meant to close the door yourself. This isn't about being passive. It's about being principled. It's about taking the energy you were ready to pour into anger and confrontation and redirecting it into discipline. Because the true battle is never with them. It's with the part of you that still wants to be seen by someone who has already looked away, and that battle must be fought in silence. Marcus Aurelius said, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." Turning inward is the path to that calm, but it's not always comfortable. When the pain is fresh, the mind wants action. It wants to text, to explain, to demand accountability. But if you pause long enough, if you breathe through the wave instead of riding it, you'll find something else underneath. A mirror showing you your need to be chosen, your fear of being invisible, your hunger to be understood. These are not weaknesses, they are invitations. When you stop fighting others and start facing yourself, growth begins, slowly, quietly, but unmistakably. It begins with reflection, not retaliation. With discipline, not dramatics. It begins the moment you say, "This pain is mine, so is the healing." Consider Eleanor Roosevelt, not just the betrayal of her husband's affair, but the way she responded to it. She didn't go on a campaign to destroy his image. She didn't spiral in public breakdowns. Instead, she deepened her involvement in humanitarian work. She built her own identity, separate from the one she once shared with him. She didn't just rise above the betrayal, she used it to become a global symbol of strength, independence, and dignity. Her inward turn created outward impact. And that's the paradox. When you stop trying to control the external, you begin to transform the internal. And over time, that internal shift begins to radiate outward. People can feel it when you've stopped performing. When your peace no longer depends on anyone else understanding your worth. That's when your silence becomes powerful. That's when your absence speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. Seneca wrote, "As long as you need validation from others, you make yourself their prisoner." Turning inward is the jailbreak. It's the radical act of saying, "I no longer need to be proven right. I only need to be aligned with my own truth." That kind of inner alignment isn't flashy, but it is magnetic. The people who once ignored you start to wonder. The ones who tried to reduce you now feel small in your presence, not because you've sought revenge, but because you've reclaimed your energy. And this is key. Your energy is currency. Where you invest it determines what grows. Invest it in bitterness, and you feed the narrative they left you in. Invest it in self-mastery, and you step into a life that no longer includes them. Not because of hate, but because of evolution. Think of Maya Angelou. Betrayal was not a stranger in her life, but she didn't let it define her story. She turned inward, wrote through her pain, and emerged with a voice so powerful that even presidents listened. She didn't rise because she shouted back. She rose because she sat in the silence and listened to what her soul still needed to say. That's what Stoicism asks of you, not to suppress your pain, but to shape it, to hold it without letting it own you, to study it without becoming it, and to walk forward without dragging the past behind you like armor. Because when you stop reacting, you start remembering who you are underneath it all. Someone who was whole long before they hurt you. Turning inward doesn't mean you'll never feel again. It means you'll feel with clarity. You'll notice when a reaction is rising, but you won't let it drive. You'll watch the storm approach, but you'll remain anchored. And eventually, you'll realize something life-changing, that you no longer crave the things that once controlled you. The next time the urge to lash out arises, pause, feel it, then ask, is this helping me become who I truly want to be? Most of the time, it won't be, and that's your cue to return, not to them, but to yourself. Your greatest revenge is your refusal to collapse, your refusal to explain, your refusal to become bitter. The silence you keep, the clarity you hold, and the dignity you protect. These are your shield. So step back, breathe deep, walk away, not with resentment, but with reverence for your own growth, because in the end, the real flex is not proving them wrong. It's proving to yourself that you never needed their validation to be whole. You just needed to remember who you were before they confused you. And that remembering, that return to self, is not loud, it's not explosive, but it is final. And maybe the most profound shift is this. You stop asking why they did it, and you start asking what it awakened in you. You stop needing them to change, and you start choosing to evolve. Because the truth is, some people are the fire, but you are the forge.
Number 3.
The best revenge is transformation. There's a kind of revenge that doesn't scream. It doesn't chase. It doesn't try to prove a point. It simply evolves. It outgrows the chaos. It becomes so focused, so grounded, so radiant, that the very person who tried to break you can no longer recognize you. And that's the beauty of Stoic transformation. It's not loud, but it's final. The ordinary mind thinks revenge is about making someone feel what they made you feel. It's reaction, it's retaliation. But the Stoic mind doesn't react. It rebuilds. It takes the raw material of pain and repurposes it into purpose. It takes betrayal and turns it into discipline. It takes heartbreak and forges resilience. And in that silent alchemy, it becomes untouchable. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." That's the pivot. You don't get even, you get elevated. You don't mirror their cruelty. You become the lesson they never saw coming. You don't waste time arguing with the past. You become too focused on the future they're no longer invited to witness. This doesn't mean you're emotionless. It means you're strategic with your energy. It means you understand that transformation is the highest form of revenge, not because it hurts them, but because it heals you. And in that healing, you become sovereign. You become still. You become whole in a way they cannot touch or undo. Real transformation isn't aesthetic, it's internal. It shows up in the way you respond when no one's watching. It shows up in how you carry yourself when you know someone is waiting for you to collapse. It shows up in your routines, in your ability to let go, in your refusal to seek validation, in the quiet way your boundaries tighten, not out of fear, but out of clarity. Take Oprah Winfrey, betrayed by people she trusted, mocked, dismissed, humiliated publicly in her early career. And yet, she didn't retaliate. She didn't spiral. She rose. She doubled down on self-work. She showed up every day, consistently, calmly, until the entire world adjusted to her presence. Her growth became undeniable. Her transformation became the answer to every insult that was ever thrown her way. That is what Stoicism calls excellence. Not revenge through drama, but revenge through dignity. Not success to prove others wrong, but success because you stayed true to your path while others wandered off of theirs. Not victory because they apologized, but because you no longer needed one. This path isn't easy, because at first your ego will want to be seen. It will want to post, to clap back, to defend your honor. But that's not strength, that's noise, and noise never lasts. What lasts is presence. What lasts is mastery. What lasts is when you become so centered that their opinions dissolve on contact. Seneca wrote, "It is the power of the mind to be unconquerable." He didn't say the power of the mouth, or the timeline, or the courtroom. He said the mind. That means your transformation starts with a decision, not to fight back, but to pull back, to turn inward, to get quiet, to go dark for a while if needed, not to disappear, but to re-emerge unshaken. Because real growth requires solitude, reflection, discipline. It asks, who are you becoming in this moment of pain? Not what do they deserve, but what do you deserve to become now that you've seen who they really are? Look at Michelle Obama. As First Lady, she endured endless criticism, some of it deeply personal, some of it racially charged, some of it rooted in ignorance. But she didn't lash out. She didn't carry bitterness into her speeches. Instead, she refined her voice, her poise, her message, her inner life. And in doing so, she transformed the role itself. She redefined what it means to lead with grace. That's revenge through evolution. And here's the secret. When you transform fully, their grip on your story dissolves. The version of you they hurt no longer exists. The conversations you used to replay feel irrelevant. The apology you once craved feels small. You've stepped into a future that makes their absence feel like peace, not punishment. This is why the Stoics didn't write about vengeance. They wrote about virtue. They didn't care about the scoreboard. They cared about the soul. And when your soul is intact, unshaken, undistracted, you don't just win, you move on. Transformation is not a costume. It's not pretending to be healed while secretly watching their every move. It's real work. It's staying present when triggers arise. It's choosing stillness over drama. It's going to bed without closure and waking up with purpose anyway. It's building a life you no longer need to escape from. One that isn't built on proving anything, but expressing everything that was always there, buried under pain. And so your best revenge is not revenge at all. It's becoming consistent, becoming whole, becoming someone who does not rush to be understood, someone who no longer performs peace, but lives it. Because what they didn't count on was your ability to keep showing up. What they underestimated was your ability to stay quiet while building something sacred. What they missed was that their absence didn't ruin you, it revealed you. Let that be your legacy. Not that you got even, but that you got better. Not that you exposed them, but that you exposed your own potential. Not that you silenced them, but that you found your own voice, steady and undeniable. So don't waste another breath trying to make them see yourself, build yourself, and then let your life be the reply, because there is no louder message than peace. There is no sharper answer than growth, and there is no greater revenge than becoming the version of yourself that no longer needs any, because the truth is, you don't rise by forcing them to notice. You rise by making peace your standard, discipline your rhythm, and clarity your foundation. And when that becomes who you are, not what you show, you've already won, quietly, completely, without ever lifting a finger.
Number 4.
Embody your philosophy. At some point, words stop working. Explaining yourself becomes noise. Defending your worth becomes exhausting, and hoping they understand you becomes a prison. That's when you realize the only thing left to do is live it. Stoicism teaches that philosophy isn't something you speak, it's something you embody, Marcus Aurelius wrote. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. That's the call. Not to talk about peace, to be peace, not to post about growth, to live growth, not to perform wisdom, but to move through life as someone who no longer needs to announce what they become. This is the final shift. It's no longer about healing to prove anything. You're not trying to get someone's attention. You're not showing up in the hopes they'll say you've changed. You're simply living from a deeper center. And in that space, your philosophy moves from theory to muscle memory. Because it's easy to quote Stoic wisdom when life is calm. It's easy to sound grounded when nothing's triggering your insecurities. But the real test, the only test that matters, is how you move when life stings. When someone disrespects you, when silence replaces closure, when betrayal breaks your expectations, what do you do then? Most people react, they defend, they explain, they try to reset the narrative. But when you truly embody philosophy, you don't need to reset anything. You become the narrative. you walk your truth, and let your presence do what your voice no longer needs to. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." And that's where many fall short. They know the words, but not the weight. They talk about detachment, but can't go 5 minutes without checking if they've been watched. They talk about peace, but let every insult shake their identity. That's not embodiment, that's performance. And the difference is felt. Embodiment doesn't need applause. It doesn't rush to correct misunderstandings. It holds its posture. Even when misunderstood, it doesn't need to say, "I've moved on." It simply moves in a way that proves it. Consider Nelson Mandela, not just the symbol of leadership he became, but the years of disciplined restraint that shaped him. After being unjustly imprisoned, he emerged not with vengeance, but with vision, not with noise, but with calm power. He didn't write revenge speeches. He didn't use his freedom to shame his captors. He lived his values. He became his philosophy. And that silent dignity echoed louder than any argument could. That's what it means to embody. You make peace visible in how you handle disrespect. You make growth tangible in how you don't react. You make clarity felt by how little you need to explain. And that's why embodiment scares people. Because they can no longer manipulate you, your center no longer shifts with their moods. Seneca wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Embodying philosophy is not about staying polished in public. It's about embracing the friction. It's about learning to breathe in the fire and not be burned by it. And over time, that friction reveals something unbreakable beneath the surface. You begin to live by a new compass. You don't rush into conflict. You don't chase anyone down. You don't argue for your worth. You simply hold your ground, not as resistance, but as clarity. You're no longer performing boundaries. You are the boundary. You're no longer trying to get closure. You are the closure. Take Jane Goodall. Her work wasn't about spotlight. It was about devotion, decades of patient, focused, principled action. No grand performance, no validation chase. And yet, her name stands today, not just for science, but for quiet integrity. She lived her philosophy long enough for the world to feel it, without needing to say it. And that's the highest level of transformation. When the people who hurt you don't even recognize the space you now live in, because you've moved out of the emotional chaos they thrived in. You've transcended the loop of reaction. You've evolved past the point of needing them to know anything. And that detachment isn't bitterness, it's clarity. When you embody your values, you don't need reminders. You don't slip back because someone apologized. You don't dilute your growth for temporary validation. You walk forward with or without witnesses because your direction is now internal. The world often rewards performance, but the soul only respects embodiment, and the soul knows when you're still performing. It knows when your peace is still dependent on perception. Sooner or later, you'll feel the exhaustion of trying to be seen. And in that moment, if you're brave, you'll stop trying. You'll just be, because being is quieter, but it's heavier. It's more honest. It doesn't crave understanding, it craves alignment. So what does it look like to embody your philosophy? It looks like not sending the message you drafted in anger. It looks like sitting through the silence and not begging for answers. It looks like waking up, doing the work, honoring your word, and keeping your soul clean. Even when no one's watching, especially then. It's in the way you walk away, not just physically, but emotionally. It's in how you stop giving updates to people who didn't stay loyal. It's in the way you stop saying, "Look at me now," and start living so powerfully that they'd need to evolve just to understand what you've become. That's when your life becomes your reply. That's when your presence becomes your protection. And that's when you realize you were never meant to explain your healing. You were meant to embody it. Let others chase closure, control, applause. You chase alignment. Let them wonder, let them guess, let them watch, but give them nothing to hold on to, because when you no longer need to be understood, you're free. And in that freedom, the Stoic lives, not as a concept, but as a quiet, undeniable force. And the best part, you won't need to announce it, because when your silence speaks with clarity, when your walk reflects wisdom, everyone will feel it, even those who once doubted you. So now you see it. The best revenge was never about hurting them back. It was about making peace so deep they can't touch it, about becoming so steady they can't shake it. You didn't need to prove anything. You just needed to rise quietly, with clarity, with discipline. That's what they never expected. Not your anger, but your evolution. And if this message resonated with you, if you're ready to stop performing your healing and start living it, then subscribe, because we don't just talk Stoicism here. We live it, we walk it, and we embody it. Remember, they don't need to beg for your forgiveness for you to be free. Your transformation is already the answer. Stay silent, stay strong, stay stoic, and I'll see you in the next one.